Yesterday, I was telling a couple of people that I had to go put together an opening for this event, and one of them said, don't worry about it, they'll all be too big to care anyway. Now, it's early, I know that, but I want to see, is anyone here too big to care? Because if you are, I can stop right now, I can bring on the first presenter. And the fact that no one, not even that guy, raised their hand, and the fact that I wasn't too big to write last night either, shows that we all kind of care. We know there's an enormous amount of money at stake in this business. We know, more importantly, we know that there's years of potential scientific and medical discovery, supports for positive agricultural and environmental outcomes, and the opportunity to bend the arc of de facto legal discrimination. And we want to have the right to be too big to care at the time of our choosing. So we know the stakes are high. Already, companies holding little more than a few licenses or distribution in a single state have become cannabis unicorns, and brands are springing up around even the smallest openings in the CBD and THC markets. The food and beverage business is looking to infusion as a more than $20 billion industry in the next few years, and entrepreneurs and huge strategic entities alike have lined up to try to figure it all out. Honestly, I'm in line too. I'm as interested as you are in what we're going to hear today, because I don't know much. Not to let you all too much into our reporting process, but in terms of covering the growth of the cannabis business, we've basically taken the approach that we need to put a fire hose in our mouths and start drinking. So here's what you'll get from us today. Our attempt to take what's come out of that fire hose and apply it to the key principles of food and beverage CPG: branding, route to market, production, investment, regulation, and the stories of entrepreneurs and strategics who are helping us all figure out what this incredible opportunity means, what its boundaries are, and what needs to happen for us to meet or exceed them. So I thank you for your attention and for your attendance, and I hope we all get the chance to learn what the hose is going to spray next. Now, when we thought about our first speaker for the day, it wasn't hard to imagine at all who we wanted. Under Kristi Knoblich and Scott Palmer, Kiva has become one of the first call brands for bud tenders when they reach for the edibles in their dispensaries. And it's largely set the standard for professional looking, great tasting, and highly efficacious infused products. I can't believe I get to say that. Now, when you deal with call brands, as I'm sure Steve Luttman would tell us, the idea is premium. It sells for more because it represents something more often. That's quality of ingredients, quality of design, quality of cause. Now, Kristi is here to talk about the ways the infused business is adopting those standards and how cannabis brands can think about building in the premium space. Please welcome Kristi Knoblich. Just a green button.
Perfect. Good morning, everyone. Thanks for having me today. My name is Kristi Knoblich Palmer, and I'm the co-founder at Kiva Confections. Thank you for that warm intro, Jeff. That was awesome. Kiva is a California-based edibles company. We started in 2010, my husband, Scott, and I. We come from humble beginnings. We started our company in our home kitchen in San Leandro, California, in the house that I grew up in. It's just one town down outside of Oakland, there in the Bay Area, California. We started Kiva because there was a need for professional, approachable edibles. products on the market that day were anything but. And so we set out to produce a product that would not just taste delicious and look beautiful, but would also be effective and consistent from product to product and batch to batch. So we've seen a lot over our 10 years in the cannabis industry. Our company now is 160 people strong. We serve 6 states. The other half of our business is distribution. Something that not a lot of folks know about the company is we also do our own distribution in the state of California, and we're growing strong and continuing to chase after our mission every day. So there's been quite an evolution in brands over these past 9 years that we've been in the business. And innovation is at an all-time high. So we're finally starting to see brands capture and package that innovation like never before. And think about it, cannabis has been around for hundreds, thousands of years. And just now, our company's starting to harness that innovation and that technology in the cannabis space and deliver it in a package. That innovation is happening at a breakneck pace. But it hasn't always been that way. And this is where we started in the cannabis edible space, was with this kind of commonly recognized pre-regulation, pre-legalization brownie. Unlabeled, untested, and completely ambiguous. So what has evolved? What elements are emerging in the edible space? First, we'll start with a package. And next, a logo. So a logo seems like probably one of the more obvious components to a brand. However, in cannabis, this hasn't always been the case. And in an industry where standards don't exist, there's no rules and regulations for quality, brands are not necessarily incentivized to take accountability for their products. So seems pretty obvious to most of us, but a little bit of a revolution in the cannabis world. Next is the info panel, and particularly on the info panel, THC content. So that brownie there used to offer, who knows, any type of thrills or unexpected outcome, and quite frankly, most consumers aren't really into that. Some definitely are looking for an unpredictable experience, but not the consumer of today, not the consumer that Kiva or any of the brands that you just saw are going after. And THC content is really what dictates the potency of a product, right? So that is, think of that like ABV, right? So that tells the consumer what the concentration level is of that product. So the other thing that we're seeing now, aside from THC content, is dosing. And dosing has come to be primarily out of state regulation and consumer demand. So consumers need the ability to get just the right amount of THC in every piece, every bite that they take. You can see that brownie there doesn't offer any scores or any way to break up a consistent dose every single time. So again, a bit of that ambiguity and experimentation when you're trying a product that doesn't have any scoring. State regulation in many states, California, Colorado as well, they used a 10 milligram dose as a suggested serving. In our experience, in the people that we talk to, the consumers that we communicate with, 10 milligrams can be a lot. I was talking to some folks yesterday at the kickoff party, and even 6 milligrams can be a lot for some folks. So 2.5 to 5 milligrams is a really great starting point. And as you can see on our gummies there on the bottom of the screen, we offer a score line even in our 5 milligram gummies that allow people to get all the way down to 2.5 milligrams. And that's 2.5 milligrams is something you can feel comfortable giving to your grandma, for example, right? And you'll both sleep better at night knowing that she's only had 2.5 milligrams, and you're not giving your grandma too much cannabis, right? So 2.5 milligrams is a really great place to start. You can go all the way up to 5. So that's an amazing trend that we're starting to see in the cannabis industry. It's handing over that control to the consumer, and when the consumer has control, they are much more likely to have a positive experience. It's a requirement. Control is a requirement of a positive experience. And when we have happy consumers, we have happy brands, right? That contributes to healthy, growing brands in the cannabis space. The next component that is absolutely revolutionary in cannabis right now is the story. So telling the story of a brand, giving your consumers some background and some reason to believe. So what we're seeing a lot right now, particularly in California, is a product in a package with a logo. A lot of like what we just saw, right? Logo, package, and a product. And these companies are competing on price. This is a really tough place to be in as a brand, because as soon as somebody comes in right behind you with the next low price, consumers are gonna hop over to that next company. And it doesn't create, having a product like that doesn't create stickiness or brand loyalty. And in the premium brand space, that's exactly what you're looking for, a reason for consumers to believe. So what that product in a package results in is a race to the bottom. And that's what we're experiencing a lot in California right now, is companies with a product in a pack, and they are just chasing that low price and driving the prices down in our state. It's really interesting. So with our Camino gummies, these launched in November, we leaned really hard into storytelling and brand building. Camino, our gummy product, takes consumers on a journey through California. The name Camino comes from the El Camino Royal, which is a historic road that connects the missions throughout the state of California. So we use beautiful landscapes as well as effects, a terpene blend to create an effect to really transport consumers and give them an immersive experience that is unlike any other gummy product they can find on the market. And the gummy space is the top category among edibles, not only in California, but in other legal states as well. Super crowded, like everybody's got a gummy. We joke and we call it right now, it's gummy wars, like everybody's doing it. So to have success in the market, having a differentiator was incredibly important to us. So we use those unique flavors and that storytelling as well as product quality and consistency to really capture and captivate our audience. And it's been working really well so far. So 7 months in the market, we've been able to capture the number 3 position in the gummy space in California. And we hope to be at number 2 by the end of the year. And as a product family, the gummies are now outselling all of our other categories as a family in our book. So gummies now outsell our chocolate bars, our terabytes, and our mints. So pretty incredible. So next we're gonna start to talk a little bit about the guardrails that exist in the cannabis space. If you're currently in the cannabis space, then you're well aware of all of the wonderful headaches or opportunities and challenges that present themselves in the cannabis space. So I'm gonna keep it to 2. A lot of what we have encountered in terms of guardrails comes from the existing stigma on cannabis, right? There have been years and years and years of miseducation and misunderstanding about what the cannabis plant is. And so that has created and been responsible for many of the guardrails that we encounter. But as operators, as cannabis consumers, as brands, we really have a responsibility to prove ourselves, right? We're already starting at a bit of a negative, so we have to work extra hard to prove that we are responsible and reliable members of the community. So the first guardrail I'd like to go over is what's currently happening in the retail environment. So this is a MedMen. They do a great job with their shopping experience in the stores that they own and manage. And what you'll notice about the shopping experience here is it's very different from a grocery store experience. There are some products available out on the shelves, but you certainly don't have a shopping cart experience, if you will, right? There's very limited opportunity to pick two products up, make a comparison, and toss them in your shopping cart, and then go about on your merry way. All the products per regulation in California have to be within arm's reach of a dispensary employee. Or they have to be locked up behind a counter. So that creates a very different style of communication that the brands need to do. So how have we overcome that challenge in the retail environment? The bud tender, you can see that gentleman there in the red. He would be called a bud tender. He's the employee at the store. And so you basically have to become best buds with the bud tender. They need to fully understand your product, so you're in there doing trainings. You've got a grassroots team in there on a regular basis doing sample events as well to consumers that walk in on kind of a one-on-one basis. And that sample event model has really become the expectation for a new brand entering the space. So if you're pitching your products to MedMen, the next question is, okay, when's the first demo day? So that's a huge way to get through training the bud tenders as well as the consumers on a one-on-one basis when they walk in the door. Another way to befriend the bud tenders is with compelling swag items. We came out with a pair of socks this year that was probably the best, most popular swag item we've ever come out with. Super simple, just a Kiva logo and some cannabis leaves on them, and they were all over Instagram and social media. It was pretty fun. One other way is with retail displays in store. So finding creative ways to come and present yourself either with a lighted sign. We're also seeing store within a store, like a pop-up experience inside the dispensaries. And you have a staff member there, again, speaking with each consumer as they come in one-on-one. And relationships in these stores remains a huge component to your success. MedMen really is the exception to the rule in that they have a chain of stores, but primarily all the retailers that we're working with are one-offs, lots of mom and pop shops. And so if you come up with a one-size-fits-all approach, you won't get past the first store. So it's really a one-size-fits-one store approach that we have to use currently. So the next example is one of my favorites because it's a great example of kind of the funny regulations that develop when you have state-by-state regulation. You get this sort of patchwork of regs. So this regulation comes from another state other than California, and I think the regulators' hearts were in the right place. And what they came up with, and don't get me wrong, there's lots of great regulations, but there are some that really don't make any sense at all. And so this regulation doesn't allow the use of a cannabis leaf on your packaging. And you could see for a product like Kiva, where about 1/3 of the package contains a cannabis leaf, that presents some really interesting challenges. And you try to make sense of this, and you go, well, I'm sure they were sitting around in a room, and they've probably never tried cannabis before, and I'm sure they're trying to do the right thing and have a safe community. They must think that a cannabis leaf attracts young people, I guess, to using the product, right? You try to make sense of these regulations, but from Kiva's perspective, we feel like the cannabis leaf is the ultimate universal symbol, right? And you can see on the top corner of the box, there is a universal symbol, but nothing captures your attention quite like a giant cannabis leaf covering the package, right? And that sends the message to folks that this is a cannabis product and you should be cautious and aware of that before consuming it. So, like any good cannabis company, we had to come up with a solution. So here's where we landed. We landed with a cacao plant instead. And we went through all kinds of combinations of designs. We tried graphics, we tried stripes, we tried dots, we reinvented the whole box. But what we're trying to convey is consistency and trust, and we want our California consumers to travel to the state and go, oh yeah, there's the Kiva I know from the store I shop in San Francisco or LA, right? You need that consistency and that message across the entire country as you spread. So presented a little bit of a challenge for us, but came up with a great kind of put us through a branding exercise. And I think where we landed was pretty good. And it's just such a great example of how when you're a cannabis company, there are so many unforeseen opportunities, we'll call them, and you're constantly kind of thrown off of your game when you least expect it by some of the silliest things that you can imagine. And so next, I'm going to move on and start talking about what it really takes to build a premium brand in the cannabis space. And the first thing I'm going to tell you about is focus. Focus is really hard right now. There are 1,000 shiny objects that you can take, that you can chase after, and so many unique opportunities. And there's a do-it-all mentality, a roll up your sleeves, get your hands dirty, and let's do everything we can type mentality. So I want to tell you a little story about when Kiva was about 4 months old. We got some feedback from the market. Consumers were asking us for ice cream. And Scott and I looked at each other, we're like, well, we love ice cream. So yeah, let's do it, right? Let's do an ice cream infused with THC. That sounds awesome. So we, very naive and very sweet and innocent, we got in there and we started experimenting with ice cream. And lo and behold, a whole freezer full of ice cream and a few failed attempts or ways of learning that didn't actually end up working out. And we finally looked at each other and we went, let's pull the plug on the ice cream idea, right? Like, who are we to think we can make ice cream? We're still operating in the home kitchen. Like, come on. So huge relief when we finally let that go. Another good story about when we were tempted again to do a similar thing. Years passed, and we looked at each other and went, you know, we're really great at edibles. Don't you think we'd probably be good at flower and vape too? So we, this time slightly less naive, but still very curious, we put a business plan together, started exploring, putting the supply chain together. We did a whole branding and development exercise. We put a ton of time and energy into what a vape and flower from Kiva would look like. And, you know, we got almost to the end of the line, and we looked at each other again, and we went, let's pull the plug on that. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't feel right. And all the products that Kiva comes out with, they have to be almost perfect. Innovative, they have to solve a problem, and we just couldn't get there with flower. So I think it's just a great constant reminder to stay focused, hone your craft, be a master at what you do, and when you've done that and when you've saturated your market, then move on with caution. So the next area is quality. Quality is very often overlooked in the cannabis world, and it's so important. And edibles in particular, there isn't a huge emphasis on taste for some reason, right? Edibles taste, you would think that would be extremely logical and a great place to focus your efforts, but I think it's because some companies believe that maybe because cannabis products offer a functional benefit that they don't actually have to taste good. But we have not found that to be true. And every product that Kiva comes out with has a really a huge emphasis on quality. So pay attention to what your consumers are asking for, listen to their feedback, spend a lot of time on your ingredients list, and make sure what you're producing is quality. And that quality comes all the way down to delivering the product on time, the customer service that you provide when people call in and reach out to your company. So don't forget about quality. And last but not least, differentiation. So differentiation in cannabis is huge. This goes back to the storytelling. I'm going to show a video on Camino here in just a second, but if you have a story, tell it. Tell it loud, scream it from the rooftops, make sure you hit on what exactly it is that differentiates your brand. So here we're going to wrap it up with a quick little video on Camino.
Cannabis has come a long way since legalization. These days, it's no longer just about getting high. Consumers want control. They crave new and nuanced experiences, which is now possible. Cannabis can actually be fine-tuned to deliver distinct effects, like creating a chill high versus, say, a chatty one. Yet to date, few brands have done anything more to communicate these distinct effects than just a couple of words on their packaging. That's where we saw an opportunity with Camino, a cannabis-infused gummy from Kiva Confections, to create a line of edibles tailored to specific mood effects, then immerse consumers in these effects at every turn. Our name, Camino, was inspired by the historic El Camino Real, a 600-mile stretch of road that connects 4 distinct, often romanticized landscapes of California, where the brand was born. And it lived under a simple 5-word tagline, a California state of mind. Each piece of communication evoked travel of the Golden State. Maps and pins, travel contests and t-shirts became invitations to visit Californian destinations through the experiential qualities of our cannabis gummies. One of our gummy products, Uplifting, paired habanero pineapple with an energizing terpene blend to take consumers on an inspiring visit to the deserts of Joshua Tree. The legal constraints of marketing a cannabis product meant we needed to be thoughtful and innovative. A vintage, travel-evocative viewfinder buried the Camino curious in the locales of each flavor, while beautiful postcards let our fans write friends from their journey to California. Camino launched in California less than 5 months ago, and yet the results so far have been an astounding affirmation of years of hard work to bring the brand to life. And it's been nice to get national recognition for it. From everyone at Kiva, we again invite you to enjoy a California state of mind.
Thank you.
That was wonderful. Let's have a seat real quick. Hello. Hi. So I have a couple of questions for you, and we have time for Chris to be working the mic for one from the crowd as well. You said if you have a story, tell it. And as your video reflected, there's also a sort of an amount of storytelling going around satisfying functional states. Is there a convention developing around that that all brands are kind of, if not officially, sort of unofficially agreeing to with regard to these functions, or is that still up in the air?
It's still up in the air, although you are seeing an emphasis on some of the areas that are most important or speak to the primary reasons that consumers are using cannabis. So a big emphasis on sleep, this kind of uplifting or bliss or energy focus as well. Also another one is probably focus and creativity. That sort of like artistic, or when the music sounds better, that sort of effect. But no, there isn't a written rule book just yet on what those effects should be.
Sure. And is there, I'm just wondering, is it, are you seeing it evolve enough that brands can sort of naturally tap into it in their development and say, if not use the exact same language, then vary on the theme enough to build a distinctive bit of differentiation for their brand, but still give that information to the consumer.
Yeah, I think as more brands emerge, they are looking at what other brands are doing so that they don't have to reinvent the wheel. And I know, I think a good example is a company called Can. I believe they presented yesterday at BevNet. And they're using a ratio of 2 milligrams of THC to 6 milligrams of CBD for their social beverage. One of our Camino gummies is a social effect and uses the same ratio. So I think that's really consumer friendly and helps consumers. I mean, that's a great ratio. Like 2 to 6 is lovely, right? It's just like warm and fuzzy, and you're just like happy to be alive when you.
Yes, teddy bear would be the strain.
Yeah, it just kind of takes the edge off and loosens you up a little bit. So I think that's a really nice ratio for people, and it's really it reinforces that ratio and that type of experience when you see it expand across brands.
Folks who are just starting brands, are there any conventions you would suggest just avoiding altogether?
Well, indica and sativa labeling is a little bit, I think, tired or old school, and requires your consumer to know probably a little bit too much about cannabis, honestly. I think brands are really leading with that effect-based, because it's like, well, wait, what does indica do again? Is indica the one that makes me go up or makes me go down? And people can't remember. So then they go, I think I like indica. Well, actually, I'm not sure. So it's like TMI for consumers. So I would glaze over indica or sativa, although you're going to get your bud tenders and your buyers asking for you, like, what is it, indica or sativa? But I think that effect is far more consumer friendly.
All right. Hey, thank you so much for coming out, for taking the time, and for sharing all this incredible information on design with us. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.